Test. Test. We're good. Bada-bum. That can be close. Actually, no, I need this for chat. Being stupid. Then just lower quality. Cool. Helix return arc? It is. For now. For now it is. Alright, cool. For now it is the Helix return arc. Portugal, the country of Ronaldo. Sweet. Hopefully we are all doing well today, ladies and gentlemen. Spongestar, hey, hello Spongestar. How are we all? Let's go Constella. Right, I think we should get into a couple of things. So the two Ferraris I want to highlight straight off the bat. Obviously, Gabby in particular has been, I wouldn't say promoting or hyping, but just saying a lot of like Ferrari 1-2s and rather Gabby or Chesney winning. I don't think they really specified who would win, but I think they're really pushing for this, like Ferrari is gonna win this race type of thing. So I'm intrigued if they're actually gonna be able to back it up, and it's better because you know the championship stories. Yeah, it's true. It is true. I do know the championship stories. But yeah. Apparently, Gabby and Chesney have been practicing. They fully believe that they're going to win this race, so we'll have to wait and see. Narrator, they did not back it up. Yeah, well, we'll have to wait and see, really. Maybe they will back it up, maybe they won't. We'll have to see how confident or how much smack talk they can say and back it up. But, that's not up for me to decide. I just commentate the races, and then it's up for them to make those events happen. Spongestar has been kicked. I thought the number went down. Who else should we be keeping an eye out for? Well, let's get into just the overall, I think, grid here. Obviously, Ferrari have said that they are looking for a 1-2. So we'll keep an eye out. We'll have a look on the radar. Gabby hasn't really been particularly known for a a race winner. I think I'm friends with you, Sponge, though. Let's see. I am. There you go. But yeah, the two Ferraris have been saying that they're looking for a 1-2. Who else should we... I mean, obviously, Jono won in France. Once again, apologies for leaving the stream. I had no real control over that, but I promise you it won't happen this time, okay? So I don't want people spamming in chat, nothing, alright? I'm here for a good time and a long time. Constella has a quali ban. Ah, yes. The Mercedes driver himself, Constella, unfortunately does have a qualifying ban, but maybe the qualifying ban was mainly just because you're so good that you just have to have a ban for quali. It definitely isn't, but we'll roll with that. Kookaburra obviously won in Imola. He's been on pole as well. I think pole twice. So he's got decent pace on him. Wow, didn't. So yeah, Kookaburra has a bit of pace on him. He won in Imola. He's been on pole twice. Obviously, once again, the Ferraris have highlighted that they're looking for a 1-2 result. Jono picked up the win in France. Who else should we be looking out for? I think Lux has gotten decent results since Season 2 has begun. Yeah, I think everyone's signed already up, so I think we're getting into it. Into a qualifying, and then we get into the race, and then we get going. I had a look at the calendar like a minute ago, and I was like, is there any sprint races? And then I realized that F2 has none. Wow. It's fine, we've got Baku. We've got that sprint shoot down, or whatever it's called. Showdown, I forgot the name of it. And then shootout, that's what it's called. Sprint shootout. And then you've also got the sprint race on the same day. And then you've got the race. It's 2 Grand Prix in 1. But yeah, enough about Azerbaijan, enough about Baku, enough about what's happening in real life and things that I may be planning. Because the only thing that I need to be planning for is how I commentate this qualifying session, which has now officially begun. So, who will leave the pit lane first? Who will be the first man to get in the cockpit of their car, choose the strategy, or not strategy, but choose the setup, choose the tires, and get out there and start driving? Who is the lucky man to leave the pit lane first? Everyone concentrating, focusing, getting into their rhythm. Eventually, they start revving that engine, they turn on the engine, and then we get going. So now the anticipated wait is what we are here at the moment. Ferrari seem to have a lot of confidence in themselves. Maybe Kookaburra can pick up another pole position. Maybe we'll see someone like Chesney or Constella come out of nowhere. Obviously Constella does have a quali ban, but maybe in the race from P19 on the grid all the way to P1. It's not impossible. I've seen it with Wizzyboy. It can be done with another driver. It seems we finally have a bit of movement in the camp. Here we go. So one driver leaves, all of them leave, and here we go. Now we start to see a pattern in the pit lane. So let's go on board with the Haas when it allows me to. Here's Ida. So Ida currently goes through turn 1 and turn 2. What I love about Portugal is its elevation. All the changes. You need to be so careful on traction. You need to be very careful on brakes. It is a tricky track, but when you can nail it, it feels very satisfactory, because Portugal isn't an easy one, but when you can get that smooth, perfect lap, it's almost just fun to drive around. The Haas of Ida coming in left and right, just going back and forth, trying to get some temperatures into those soft compound tires. They're going to go up in elevation, a little loot loss in rear there. Obviously, we could potentially see a spin or two up there. It's probably the most common place for people to lose traction and lose their rear end. Uh-oh, there they go. Who else has come out of the pit lane to start a fast lap at some point in the very near future? Well, the Red Bull of Kookaburra currently cruising through the second sector. Such a dynamic track, Portugal. It's actually made for MotoGP and GT3 cars, but we were lucky enough to see Formula 1 be around for a couple of years. So Sam Ross in the Alpine, DRS active, goes over the timing line, and he is the first man to start his fast lap. The Haas behind, I think that's Ido, coming to follow on with his fast lap. Goes a little wide, but doesn't invalidate, so the Alpine at least has to be happy with that. Into turn 2 he goes, or turn 3, my apologies. Higher elevation, need to have a small lift, make sure you don't lose the rear there. Continue forward, pedal to the metal, full throttle, DRS active, now shut as he goes into the braking zone. Hairpin there, also need to be careful. I mean, Portugal is a very cautious track, but it is a fun one at that, and a very entertaining one as well. Currently going through the Imola typed sort of corner. I don't really know the name of it, but Either way, we move, we push, we keep going. The Alpine, once again, up in elevation. This is an interesting braking zone. You have to kind of choose where you're going to brake. You can brake much later, go more onto the apex, but maybe get screwed over by someone who's taking a more outside line and can benefit by more grip on the track. The Alpine goes purple in the first, purple in the second. Wizzyboy with a 118.5, but maybe the Alpine of Sam Ross can change that around the final corner, which is more just a long winding kink. Either way, the Alpine's going to get DRS across the line. It's a 118.6, and he's around the 10th off. So unfortunate. He cannot pick up provisional pole, but Chesney in the AlphaTauri can, and that is a 118.1, and it's 0.4 quicker. But then, as I said, a man who seems to have the one-lap pace of Charles Leclerc and Baku picks up a 117.9 and sticks it on provisional pole. So Kookaburra doing a great job. Chesney in the Ferrari, currently P3 with a 118.4, so maybe that Ferrari magic that Gabby has been talking about could be actually coming true. What about Nano in the Williams? He's currently P10. He's currently going through the third sector at the moment, probably just finished up the second sector. Now goes down in elevation around the hairpin, trying to keep it as together as you possibly can. Obviously, you can lose the rear, lose the entire car at any point just by going on that throttle just a little too early, just getting a little too excited. DRS active across the line. It's only P9 for the Williams of Nano. What about Banana in the Mercedes? Currently going through the second sector, probably the hardest bit of elevation around Portugal. Need to keep it cautious, but he does so effectively. The Mercedes into the next corner, goes right over the curbs, but overall keeps it clean. Picked a decent braking point. Into the next corner, higher elevation. Continue to go up in elevation, and then all of a sudden, with a little bit of lag, there's a dip all of a sudden. This is what's great about Portugal. It never stands still. It never stays still. There is a very dynamic layout to this, and it's what keeps drivers on their heels, on their toes. Speaking of on their toes, what can the Mercedes set? It is a 121.4, and it is only P10, only ahead of the Haas and AlphaTauri of Marco and Jono. Obviously, remember, Jono does have a quali ban, so don't mind his incredibly large laps. What about ART Lux? In the Red Bull, currently going through the third sector. It may be an outlap, but please understand that the outlap does disappear in the third sector. People called me out for that, but it does disappear. Literally look at it. But yeah, either way, Lux coming into the pit lane. Anyway, I think, yep, OXL4 does start his fast lap. The Aston Martin through the first sector, followed into the kink of a second sector into the first major braking zone of the third corner. I said sector by accident, my apologies. Goes a little wide on the curb, and it is an invalidation. I saw he go right over that white line, and then I knew immediately it was over for the Aston Martin. Unfortunate scenes for OXL4. What is Banana doing? Currently P11, seems to have set a 121.4, obviously, as we said earlier, but maybe looking to get some improvements on that lap, on obviously one lap old soft compounds now. Hasn't come into the pit lane, but maybe potentially thinking about it this time with a 120, not even near the timing line, so definitely slowing down to come into the pit lane. It would make the most sense, and it is happening indeed. What about Marco? 3 lap old soft compounds. He's still pushing. DRS active. 2 gear shifts down into the first corner. You can tell those soft compounds are not good for fast laps anymore. Goes a little wide originally up into the higher elevation. Stays on throttle too long and loses the rear up there. DRS eventually opens in that rear wing. Just gives a bit more downforce into the hairpin. A bit more towards the apex there, but whatever suits the Haas's driving style. Either way, it seems he's backed out of it. Doesn't seem he's pushing as hard, and even if he was, I think it wouldn't be too much of an improvement for Marco at this current stage. What about Wizzyboy? Currently 1 lap old soft compounds. He's not coming into the pit lane. DRS active in the Alfa Romeo will go again, so into pretty much a very long straight into the braking zone around the 75 meter mark, I'd say. First corner, second corner, third corner. The Alfa Romeo doing a pretty decent job here. Need to remember to lift at just a little tiny bit to make sure that rear doesn't lose its back end. The Alfa Romeo doing a decent job into the next braking zone, into the hairpin. Also need to make sure not to be too happy on the throttle, but the Alfa Romeo does a good job. Scotty Boy currently sitting in P6. Is he able to improve it? We'll have to see if he goes green. He's currently in Sector 2. Doesn't seem to be too much of an improvement for the Alfa Romeo, but we'll have to keep watching. Let's go over to Chesney in the AlphaTauri, who is what seems to be on fresh compounds, having a bit more of a tussle with the Alpine. Yeah, not so much of a fast lap for the AlphaTauri at the moment. What about Gabby in the Ferrari, obviously going through the final corner? DRS will be active, and I'm guessing Gabby's about to start their lap. So here we go. Gabby into the first corner, braking zone around the 75-meter mark, as said before. Second corner, that little kink into the braking zone, get right over that curb, but obviously you don't want to get the wheel stuck on there. You go immediately into a spin, and then it's game over for your rear there. Same for going up in that elevation. Too much throttle, and the rear will just immediately give out, and you will spin. But the Ferrari does a good job. Gabby keeps it nice and stable, going through the higher elevation, through the lower elevation, and the Ferrari's doing a pretty good job at the moment. Into the braking zone, to the highest point of elevation here around Portugal. Also the easiest part for you to spin, then a big dip in elevation, continuing it through into the tricky braking zone. You almost have to pick your choice. When are you going to brake? Are you going to brake early, get more grip later on? Are you going to brake later? Well, right now it seems Gabby chose the right braking zone because he's purple in the second sector. So Gabby is starting to get a bit of a lap on him. He's starting to pick up the pace. He's starting to set a lap alight, and into the last corner when everything seemed to go his way, he's accidentally got in the way of OXL4. OXL4 has now retired, and Gabby has unfortunately invalidated that lap and into the pit lane. The Ferrari will come. Chesney currently P4. It looks like he's coming out of the pit lane, so Ferrari in decent positions right now, P2 and P4. It could be a P1 and P2 as they said before, but we'll have to watch the race to figure out how that all unfolds. What is Ozaswaza currently doing at the moment? Well, what seems to be a fast lap at the moment with the lack of outlap around his name. Apparently he's 3 seconds up. This telemetry is probably broken, but we'll just spectate it anyway. Ozaswaza currently going through the third sector into the braking zone, just tapping the brake. Obviously don't want to lock those rear tires up and cause an unlucky time right over that curb, and he will not be setting a lap because he's coming back into the pit lane. So the Aston Martin deciding that nope, I'm good, and comes into the pit lane. So what can Marco do? DRS active, he's going to go over the timing line, and now in P11 he's going to begin his lap into the first corner, 75-meter mark, nearly the 50-meter mark for the Haas driver, but keeps it subtle, keeps it clean for the most part. Into the third corner, don't want to go too over that curb. Into the high elevation, a small lift to make sure you don't lose the rear. Haas is doing a pretty good job at the moment. DRS now active, rear wing wide and open. Into the next braking zone, need to be careful with how you place your car going into that hairpin. But then once again, the Haas being cautious, being safe, but being quick, being rapid around the track of Portimao, around the track of Portugal. Marco currently P12. Will he improve? Is he going to be able to improve? Well, right now the Haas currently in P12, as we said, into the tricky braking zone, almost deciding to brake and accelerate at the same time. Purple in the second sector, so does a better second sector compared to Gabby, but maybe Gabby's lap won't even be counted because Gabby came back into the pit lane. I'm not 100% sure on how that system works, but the Haas driver comes around the second last corner, only has one more corner to go, just needs to keep it tight and clean close to the apex. He does exactly that. DRS active. What can the Haas do across the timing line? It's a 118.5, and it's not good enough for pole. It's not good enough for P5. It's only good enough for P9. At least it's in the top 10 for the Haas driver. What about Logan in the McLaren? DRS currently active, going into that lower elevation, eventually braking into the hairpin, doing a decent job at the moment, trying to keep that car as stable as possible around the tricky track of Portugal. Now, trying to almost balance your brake and throttle there. You don't want to have too much throttle because you also don't want to lock up the rears, but you also don't want to be full out on that throttle. You will immediately lose the rear, and then it's game over for you, your traction, and probably your car as well. Into the braking zone, you always have to pick and choose where you're actually going to brake. Normally drivers just pick a point, pick some type of item or object or miscellaneous item to look at, and then that's where they will brake the McLaren. Continuing through to the second last corner, the tight, fast last corner, close to the apex, opens up the corner at the very end. DRS active across the line. It's a 118.8, and the McLaren goes P11. Not too bad, not too shabby from Logan. What is Jono doing? Your French winner, unfortunately, has invalidated and will have to stick in P8 for the current time, or maybe once again that outlap disappearing, but now he's on a fast lap, so my apologies for that in advance. Into the first corner, 6th gear, full throttle going into the second, just a simple kink. Into the third, 2nd gear now, little lift, making sure not to lose the rear end of the car. Unfortunately invalidates, and that's Jono on the outlap and the fast lap invalidating. Unfortunate for the AlphaTauri. What can Gabby do? Currently seems to be slowing down on those fresh compounds. Maybe doing a double warm-up, or maybe getting in the way of a potential driver. Not 100% sure, but either way, currently taking it nice and slow on what seems to be this double outlap. What about Nano? The Williams currently in P14, not able to really improve and get closer to any other driver. Unfortunately, Nano really hasn't had the result that he was probably looking for here in Formula 2. He's been struggling most of the season, just in that lower midfield, but he's definitely trying his absolute hardest to try and gain a bit more pace, to get closer to the rest of the pack and get closer to more drivers so he can be more competitive and maybe get another shot in Formula 1 where he used to be an Aston Martin driver. But currently into the second last corner. I don't know if this is more of a push lap or more just in between, but either way, he's not pointing towards the pit lane. He's coming towards the timing line. Across the line, the Williams sets a 119.2. It's an improvement by 1/10, and but unfortunately he will stay P14 for the time being. Ida in the third sector, and this is proof to anyone that says that the outlap telemetry does not disappear in the third sector. It literally just did. Obviously he's not on his fast lap, but he's going to come around the final corner to begin it. DRS active. Here we go for the Haas driver. Currently in P13, second last on timings, but unfortunately second last is actually the Williams of SpongeTile. Goes right over that curb, to be fair. Maybe potential suspension damage by how much that car needed to lift. Really struggling with the locking up there, and potential damage to the brakes as well. But either way, doing a good job. DRS now active. Swerving left and right, maybe backing out of it, not 100% sure. This is quite an interesting fast lap from a driver that I've seen. But either way, it seems like he's pushing full throttle, pedal to the metal into the next couple of corners. Need to choose when you're going to accelerate, when you're going to brake, continue it forward. A lot of drivers can mess it up there, but no one has done it so far. So solid, I guess, stability of the car, solid just control of the car from every driver. The Haas is going to continue it through into the next higher elevated corner. Need to be careful on how you use the throttle there. Need to make sure that any higher elevated corners are taken with more precaution. Into the final corner. Tight to the apex, close to the curb. What can he do? Up to the timing line. DRS now active, and it's a 120.5, and he will stay currently in P13. So what about Logan? What about Jono? What about Marco? What are we all up to at the moment? Well, Scotty Boy on a fast lap. The Alfa Romeo currently sitting in P7. Into the lower elevation, quite a big dip around track of Portugal. Decent little cornering there, decent rotation from the Alfa Romeo. You need a decent setup because obviously it's quite fast paced, the corners are faster, but you still need that downforce because a lack of downforce and your car will keep spinning around every corner. DRS now active, the Alfa Romeo sets a 118.4, it's an improvement by 600ths, but he will stay P7 at the moment. Chesney crosses the checkered flag, only P5. Ozaswaza almost stopped out on track, only P8. Banana Girl, only P13, or Giggle, my apologies. Smoke Wisp and Sponge Star, P16, P17, and obviously OXL4 and Constella couldn't improve or because of qualifying bans. So immediately Kookaburra sets a new fastest lap. Obviously we didn't see any improvements in pole or any improvements by any lap, but either way, the man in the Red Bull gets a 117.63 tenths quicker than the Ferrari of Gabby, who is currently invalidated, so he will not be able to improve. What about ART Lux? Well, he's going to get the DRS across the timing line. It's a 117.9 and will push Gabby down into P3. What about Zlippy? Well, he's on a fast lap at the moment. Jono gets P5 with his teammate Chesney in P6, so not too bad there. Samros P8 at the moment, so everyone signed across the timing line and put themselves into their final positions for the grid for the race. Lippy around the second last corner. Now you need to get nice and tight to the apex, eventually open up the last corner, get a good exit. DRS eventually open. Aston Martin planted in the middle of the track. Lippy goes P4. Gabby currently P3. Chesney has crossed the line in P7, so Ferrari has a bit of work to do if they want that 1-2 ideology that they have been praising, and pretty much everyone rather out on the track about to come into the pit lane or have already gone over the checkered flag, and now we just wait for the time to finish up and then we go to the race. Solid little qualifying there, so obviously Kookaburra sticks it on provisional pole and now pole position with a 117.631. His teammate Lux able to stick it in with a 117.979. The Ferrari of Gabby setting it with P3. So Ferrari still in the mix, but it seems a Red Bull 1-2 has been secured in qualifying and for the grid. So here is your current standings. Kookaburra on pole, ART Lux P2, Gabby in P3, P4 is Lippy in the Alfa Romeo, P5 and P6 are the Alpha Tauris of Jono and Chesney, so that should be decent constructors points for the Alpha Tauri if they can stick to their current positions. Ferrari have a little bit of work to do if they want that desired 1-2 finish, and I'm sure at least for Gabby's sake he would want that P1 result. But obviously Gabby has a 5 grid penalty that I wasn't able to pick up on earlier, so he'll fall down to P8 and he'll fall right behind his teammate in P7. So it is race time here in Portugal. Fun times for a long time. The birthplace of Ronaldo and the catchphrase Sue. This track is used for MotoGP, GT3 racing, and now for today, House of Racing. In the Formula 1 cars, you can see all the pit crews doing their daily T-Pros stretches, getting in, making sure all the bones have been cracked, you are as flexible as possible. They've built up their strength, obviously. They're doing the T-pose crunches to make sure they have the muscle gain to pick up those tires and put a new one on. Apparently there's a new chat, but it hasn't popped up. 5 seconds left on the clock. And now, with no more time remaining, we head to the formation lap. No formation lap. 5 red lights. Here we go. Lights out. Or maybe not. This is very confusing. Either way, the lights go out and it's pedal to the metal for the Portuguese Grand Prix. I forgot that we actually disabled all of it, so my apologies for not being on top of that. Into the first corner, the Alpine of Sam Ross takes a lead with Kookaburra into P2. Zlippy will now take P3 with Ozza Swazza nicely kept into P4. Unfortunately, the Red Bulls not doing so well. Lux into P10, and Kookaburra actually doing pretty well to stay into P2. So solid for Kookaburra, unlucky for Lux. Position changes all over the place. Here in the lower midfield, we can see collision between what seems to be Nano and the Haas driver of Marco. This gives the opportunity to the Aston Martin of OXL4, who's currently going into P12 at the moment, so not too bad for the Aston Martin driver. Oh, a bit of contact between the McLaren of Logan and Constella, and now they are all over the place on the grass trying to get back onto the track itself. Obviously, I forgot about the lack of formation lap to stop internet issues. Sam Ross in P2 gets overtaken by Kookaburra, who set it on pole. Obviously, Lux down in P9, unfortunate. Gabby staying in P4, so solid little result there. Only fell down one position, so the Ferrari can't be too complaining about that. I know that is not a real English sentence, but we will deal with it. Either way, Gabby will regain P3 and back onto the podium, so solid result there. Chesney up into P5, so the Ferraris making stuff happen, making moves a possibility. Let's go into this midfield where we can already see 5 drivers come into the pit lane. So ladies and gentlemen, throw the predicted pit stop strategy out of the window, because 5 drivers have immediately come into the pit lane, and some of the drivers ahead will be lucky enough to know that they have just gained a bunch of positions for completely free. Yeah, great start for a lot of drivers, bad start for a couple. Here's Nano against OXL4, slipstream, and he seems he's going to back out of it. Doesn't really want to fight going up this higher elevation like the Haas and McLaren did. Obviously had to do pirouettes onto the grass to get back onto the track. The Williams keeping his distance from the Aston Martin, trying to pick and choose when he should go, loses the rear, and now maybe doesn't have a choice to pick and choose, because unfortunately creates a bit of a gap between the two drivers, but maybe slowly bringing that back up together. ART Lux doing a good job making up a couple of positions, currently in P6 from falling down to P9, so the Red Bull picking up a bit of the pace that he lost off the start. Kookaburra obviously back into P1. Gabby's come into the pit lane, so maybe some type of damage already being ensued onto that Ferrari. It seems Jono takes the fastest lap. ART Lux with a 3-second time penalty, probably for track limits, so unfortunate for the Red Bull driver on that occasion. But yeah, currently your French Grand Prix winner currently stands in P9. Ida in P8. P7 is Nano. P6 OXL4. P5 is ART Lux. You can see a bit of a battle happening up ahead between Chesney, Zlippy. This is where we have to say Riz and Chesney and make sure we don't get it too confused. Either way, we continue it through. Well, let's go on board with the Red Bull of ART Lux, who gets a much better exit compared to the Ferrari. They're going to go wheel to wheel. The Red Bull with the outside line is going to switch to the inside. He's going to brake later. He's going to go more towards the apex. The Ferrari's going to take a more conservative outside line, but it won't pay off. The Ferrari will back out of it, maybe looking for a different opportunity. The Red Bull seems to have it all under control though, and it seems ART Lux back up into P4, so not too bad for the Red Bull at the moment. The Mercedes has a yellow flag brought out. There's a McLaren. Smoke Wisp has retired from the session. It seems no VSC or safety car will be deployed at this current stage. Constella spins on the grass at the hairpin. Unfortunate for the Mercedes, just at that higher elevation, got too excited on the throttle. That sees Gabby and Kinsella both pie, and this has put the Ferrari, their hopes and dreams of a 1-2 here, into dust at this current stage. But it is only early doors, it's only early days, and the Ferrari can still make that happen. It is not over yet, as the once famous KSI once said. Scotty Boy in P14 in the Alfa Romeo getting very dangerously close there, nearly hitting the rear of the Aston Martin of Ozza Swazza. DRSL active as that rear wing opens up for the driver. The Mercedes of, I think that's Constella, having another spin, and those boiling hot tires are not being a help for the Mercedes driver. Banana seems to have gotten the car back up and running without too many issues, and it's gonna continue into the braking zone, going into the hairpin. Kookaburra's done really well though. He's done exactly, everything he's needed to do. 1.7 second gap, 4 laps in. The Red Bull did lose his position in the beginning, got overtaken by Sam Ross in the Alpine, who's now fallen down to P12. But the Red Bull's done a good job. He's taken back P1, and right now he is cruising out in front without too much pressure from behind. So his Lippy has a bit of a job to do if he wants to pressure that Red Bull, if he wants to make an overtake, and if he wants to snatch away P1. I'm guessing that's Constella once again having issues with the rear of their car. Maybe the temps are just too high. You really do need to slow down if you want to reach normal temperatures in those rubber slick Pirelli tires. Chesney in the AlphaTauri, also closing in on the Alfa Romeo of Zlippi, so we'll have to keep an eye out for that. And the timing sheets 6/10 off. The AlphaTauri is Riz in the Ferrari, and right now he seems to be the hope and saviour of Ferrari at this current stage. 13 comments. Once again, I can't really read the comments. I don't really know what's happening, but I'll have to update Twitch at some point so I can read them again. ART Lux currently 4-lap old mediums, just like the top runners, hasn't needed to come into the pit lane, so it's a very thankful time for the Red Bull. Nano has done a really good job from, I think, was it P14, P15, all the way to P6 on the grid, on soft compounds though, so he will probably box earlier than majority of the drivers. The only other man on soft compounds at the moment is Logan in the McLaren, who seems to be very close, or at least in front of a upcoming battle here. So obviously between P14, 13, 12 of Scotty Boy, Ozzy and Sam Ross. It seems the Alfa Romeo is further away compared to the Aston Martin and Alpine. DRS obviously has been active for a couple of laps now. Can Ozzy potentially make a move? He's going to use ERS as well. He's going to get very close. He's going to get very close around the outside. He's going to make contact with the Alpine, even further contact with the rear. The Alpine's going to hit the Alfa Romeo into a spin. Both of them going to have to do pirouettes back onto the track, and that is detrimental for both races. Unlucky for the Alfa Romeo and for the Alpine, who now have to suffer the consequences of making collisions here at Portugal. Obviously both Mercedes having a terrible race. Terrible for the constructors, obviously. Banana and Constella just not where they want to be. Constella's just parked up on the track, almost moving when the FIA tell them to move. Red Bull of Kookaburra seems to have that gap starting to close in a little bit. Seems Lippy has just that upper edge advantage at the moment, but we'll have to keep watching out. It's gone from 1.7 down to 9/10, so maybe the Alfa Romeo does have the pace necessary to beat Kookaburra at his game, at his current possession of P1. It just seems the rotation of that Alfa Romeo seems to be slightly better than the Red Bull. Chesney makes the move into P3 in the Ferrari. Obviously was P4 but got past the AlphaTauri. I think maybe one of them had a spin, but either way, the Ferrari trying to gain time on the Alfa Romeo, but the Alfa Romeo also gaining time on Kookaburra. Logan has a 3-second time penalty in the McLaren. What's currently happening down there? Well, let's go to a 2/10 gap. So obviously very tight fighting happening in the midfield between P9, P8 and P7 of Jono, OXL4 and Nano. It seems Nano just trying to pull away from the Aston Martin, and the AlphaTauri maybe getting a bit close to that Aston Martin. He's going to take the outside line, or the inside line, which then becomes the outside line. He's going to be more direct onto that apex. He's going to get more grip. Obviously, different elevation means different use of racing line. He's going to send it down the inside. A bit of contact made. For the most sake, it's clean, and I say that, but Jono gets spun by the Aston Martin down to P9. He has another pirouette spin. He needs to try and get it back under control, and the AlphaTauri, obviously you can get the Alphas mixed up. He's had another spin. He's made contact with the McLaren of Logan, and almost friendly fire there, not on the same team, but just accidental collision that sees Logan in P11, Jono in P12, down to P13 and P14 as both the drivers of Gabby and Marco do get by. Logan comes into the pit lane with 8 laps now passed in the Portuguese Grand Prix, so a decent little job there from the McLaren. Sam Ross now going to be able to get a nice little overtake through, obviously, the pit lane. Medium compounds currently stuck on those Alpine rims. Gabby maybe potentially feeling a bit of pressure from Marco. It seems Gabby may be effectively using ERS when he needs to. Let's go on board to kind of have an idea on how he's using it potentially. He's not even using it at all. It just seems the Haas having worse exit compared to the Ferrari, maybe less, and a lack of rotation from the Haas. Not 100% sure, but either way, P12 for the Haas driver at this current stage. Gabby doing a great job through the shifts and turns and the swift movements and elevations of Portugal. Trying to find a bit of action obviously is hard while 9 laps have passed. ART Lux still in P5, Nano with a 5-second time penalty. Trying to find some type of gap either way. Nano in P8 now coming into the pit lane. His teammate will get by without too many issues. OXL4 yellow flag has been deployed. Trying to figure out where that may have happened. If you guys are saying something in chat, I can't see it. I cannot see it. So, you know. OXL4 currently in P7, trying to gain some time on Edo in the Haas. But it seems that gap just too far for anything to really happen. And it's more just trying to drive your own race, trying to extend your stint to just focus on your strategy and make moves through pit lanes, through undercuts, through overcuts. Chesney makes the move on Zlippy. Zlippy falls down to P4 as Chesney in the AlphaTauri is managed to stay with Chesney in the Ferrari, but I think what I'll do is I'll just say Riz and Chesney to keep it simple. Either way, Chesney's going to get DRS on Riz. The Ferrari, potentially an impending doom for him. Either way, into the first corner, into the braking zone. The Ferrari's going to stay ahead. A bit of a slip in the rear for the AlphaTauri, but for the most part, he keeps it pretty clean. Chesney into the third corner to follow with Riz. DRS now active for the AlphaTauri driver. He's going to think about a move, but no, he's going to tuck it into the curb, following, trying to be nice and lenient there. Once again, a more conservative line going into that hairpin. But either way, the AlphaTauri doing a pretty good job. Currently on the podium position in P3. Chesney loses the rear, going up in a higher elevation. That's going to give an advantage to the AlphaTauri of Chesney, who once again will maybe potentially be closing in a little bit, trying to get closer. The Ferrari of Chesney just needs to think about what he can do, because it's staying around that 5/10 mark and then 7/10 and then falling back down. It seems to be quite an equal battle at the moment. It seems the AlphaTauri is doing better around some areas and the Ferrari doing better around others. Once again, Kookaburra absolutely cruising out in P1 with a 3-second gap. Well, pretty much 3-second gap. 6/10 gap. Can Chesney make a move on Riz? Probably not close enough. Let's keep moving through the pack. Obviously P5, P6, we've got Lux and Haas P7, we've got OXL4 P8, we've got Ozaswaza P9, we've got SpongeStar P10, we've got Gabby, and close behind in P11 is Marco in the Haas. P12 is the Alpine of Sam Ross, P13 is Nano, P14 is Banana, P15 is Logan, P16 is Jono after having a couple of small spins and issues that has taken him out of position. Either way, it seems to be an impending overtake against the McLaren, unless that McLaren can defend like no tomorrow. ERS has all been used up. You can see the red flashing light on the rear of the car compared to the 17% that Jono has in the tank. So DRS will be active for the AlphaTauri driver. We're going to get a slipstream. He's going to take a more inside line with the McLaren, so it's going to be interesting how he's going to make this choice. And it's an easy switch back for the AlphaTauri, makes easy moves on it. Into the third corner, no attack back from the McLaren, went way too close to the inside line, and it sees the McLaren overtaken. But now the McLaren has got DRS on the AlphaTauri. AlphaTauri goes more inside here. The McLaren's going to get closer for now, but goes a little wide on the curbs, and it's a better exit for the AlphaTauri driver at this current stage. And unfortunately, Marco loses his complete rear there, and Sam Ross is going to get past with no issue at all. And it is P11 for the Alpine, with P12 being the Haas of Marco. Gabby doing a good job getting back into the points. Obviously, started P3, went down 7 positions into P10 after making a couple of moves, stick and stay. But he needs to keep getting his job done. He needs to keep working at it, and eventually Gabby might be able to have the dreams of that Ferrari 1-2 that he has constantly said in the Discord chat. P7 OXL4 may be able to take P6 after Ito seems to be struggling with the rear of his car into the lower dip of Portugal, trying to gain time on the Haas, but for now seems to be at a solid distance, a solid gas. I meant gap, my apologies. The Aston Martin almost trading times with the Haas at the moment. 8 tenths and then 7 tenths and then 9 tenths. It's a very close little battle there for who can close and who can widen that gap. Marco 7 tenths off Sam Ross in the Alpine, and then Sam Ross 1.2 off the Ferrari of Gabby. Obviously most gaps are starting to increase here, so we're going to see less action as we continue to unfold. The real question is, as we continue to power through this race, when will people decide it's time to come into the pit lane, it's time to box? Obviously we have a couple of people down in that lower area into the back marker type of positions who have come into the pit lane. You can see the 4-lap old hard compounds on Jono, Logan and Scotty Boy, and Banana will come into the pit lane, probably for hard compounds on the current amount of laps remaining. Is it hards? It is indeed. The white colored tires, and he comes out with a decent time in the pit lane, not too bad for the Mercedes. Logan will get past the Mercedes, nice undercut for the McLaren. Jono picks up a 3-second time penalty, obviously because of track limits, so unfortunate for the French Grand Prix winner. Nano currently in P13 and P12. The Haas of Marco fighting away with the Alpine of Sam Ross. Sam Ross picks up a 3-second time penalty, which opens up a decent opportunity for the Haas driver, trying to get past him, trying to get a close enough gap where DRS is effective to make a move stick. Into the second last corner, trying to gain as much time as possible, trying to get at least some type of grip into the tight winding corner in close to the apex. DRS eventually active for the Haas driver. Right over the grass goes the Alpine, almost trying to flick dirt into the helmet of the Haas driver. Doesn't affect him though. Marco's going to go right over the curb. He needs to lift to make sure the rear doesn't spin out, and unfortunately no move will be able to be met. Yellow in sector 3, I think that's Jono. He's made some type of mistake there. It is a spin. No crash, and very unlikely to see a crash around Portugal with the wide open space that it has for spinning compared to crashing. So Jono will come into the pit lane probably to switch tyres. He'll pick up a 5-second time penalty. It won't matter because he's retired from the session inside pit lane conditions. Unfortunate for the AlphaTauri. Obviously Banana in the Mercedes will now take over in last place, which is now considered P16. 2.2 seconds is the Red Bull of Kookaburra. He's spent 14 laps on mediums, but so has the Ferrari of Chesney Riz. He's done a good job so far in this race. He started in a lower position compared to his teammate Gabby, but almost a trade in positions between the two Ferraris. The Ferrari master plan almost working out for them. Gabby will fall down Chesney will come up, and now he's gaining around 2/10 a lap. So solid little performance from Riz at the moment compared to his teammate of Gabby, unfortunately in P10, but could potentially continue to fight away to get closer to his teammate, to get better constructors points, but to also potentially get him better points in the championship. He takes P9 from a ghosted Williams of Spongestar, who now falls down to P10 on the current timings. So obviously Kookaburra now reaching probably one of his first blue flags, but probably is, actually it definitely is. Banana Giggle currently hasn't been blue flagged, but DRS is active. The Red Bull's getting closer to the Mercedes trying to pull away, like, I am not getting blue flagged today. It doesn't matter, he's ghosted. Eventually it will happen. Let's continue to see what may be happening in the lower midfield at the moment. It seems Lippy's come into the pit lane. ART Lux to follow, no interruptions, no stopping because of traffic. And it seems more drivers are starting to come into the pit lane, so around I'm guessing lap 16, lap 17, people who are on maybe medium compounds might want to start considering the idea of coming into the pit lane. And for Kookaburra, that is going to be a tough decision, because if he comes into the pit lane... Oh, Sam Ross has retired. Sorry to interrupt, but the Alpine of Sam Ross has retired from the session. I think it's in the pit lane, so shouldn't be effective. But that is another driver ticked off the list, and that is now 4 drivers out of the Portuguese Grand Prix. Kookaburra nearly blue flagging this Mercedes, just seeming not to get close enough. Chesney in P2 with a 2.1 second gap to the Ferrari. Chesney in the AlphaTauri with a 1.6 second gap. Logan with a 3-second time penalty for track limits. Kookaburra now decides to pull the trigger and come into the pit lane. You can see a lot of pit crew actually out here, so maybe a lot of decisions being decided. You can see Mercedes, Ferrari, McLaren. It seems majority of drivers and teams are potentially coming into the pit lane. Either way, Kookaburra now comes out. He can now fully belt on that power, and he will leave in P5 from P1, but the Ferrari of Riz now leads the Portuguese Grand Prix, but he needs to still consider the fact that he needs to box soon. If he continues to stay out, it will only affect him more. So the earlier you can box, the better of a chance you have with fighting with the Red Bull at the very end. Right now, lap 17 of 33 has been completed. Chesney currently in P1, with Chesney in the AlphaTauri in P2 and OXL4 taking up P3, but please consider the fact that for probably 4 or 5 drivers, and that's also including Gabby, and maybe even 6 drivers for Logan and Scotty Boy, who are on 9-lap-old hard compounds, need to start considering when they're going to come into the pit lane and when they're going to switch their tires and when they're really going to start putting their strategy into effect. For Chesney, that effect is happening right now, and I'm guessing it's going to be mediums to hard compounds, or another pair of mediums. You could do 17 laps and then another 17 laps, but it wouldn't count. You would be disqualified, you would be black flagged, obviously also serving their current penalty at this current stage. And also, well, I thought changing the front wing, but that was just in the background. Ida comes into the pit lane, Chesney now comes out of the pit lane, and Kookaburra will retake P3 from both drivers. So it's looking like a Kookaburra undercut at the moment, who will take back P1. If you are commenting something in the Twitch chat, I am not able to read it. The Alfa Romeo of Zlippy currently in P8. Gets overtaken by Nano in P9, who now takes away that position that Zlippy once had. Also close to the Haas of Ida. DRS now active for the Williams, trying to make a move closer. Going around the outside goes the Williams. He's going to stick it around the outside. Gone, and it's sold to Nano, who takes P7. What a move from the Williams driver, who goes into there. A bit of a brake check. I mean, Obviously not a purposeful one, but either way, the move did cause a bit of a collision with the rear of the car. But either way, Nano has made the move stick, and it is P7 and decent points right now for the Williams driver. ART Lux currently 4 tenths off Gabby, 9 tenths off Chesney. Riz now gets overtaken by Kookaburra, who sets fastest lap and looks very strong for a win here in Portugal with his current strategy in play. Chesney just not close enough, even with those new tyres, to get something working. He's going left and right, trying to swerve, trying to get some type of temperature into those hard compounds. Either way, for now, it is looking like a Kookaburra W once the virtually it is a Kookaburra W after all the strategy has been figured out. OXL4, obviously 18 lap hard compounds compared to 2 lap old hard compounds. He won't last that long. The AlphaTauri of Chesney, the AlphaTauri fighting away with the potential fight of the Ferrari of Gabby. I'm getting my words mixed up here, so I do apologize, but I'm trying my best. Logan in the McLaren serving what seems to be a time penalty maybe, or at least trying to replace the front wing. Either way, eventually he comes out of his pit box back into the pit lane and eventually released for him to go racing once again. The Haas driver of Ida getting pretty close to the Williams of Nano. Closer, more tight line, closer to the more inside line. The Haas driver with ERS open at times, then closing it once again. Decent slipstream. DRS will now be active. 8th gear, fully pushing that car to its limits. It's going to stick to the inside line. The Haas is going to go more outside. It should be an easy switchback if he can make it stick, but no, he brakes too late. Either way, Ito makes the move stick either way. Into P7, Nano falls back down to P8, and that is it for the Haas driver at the moment. Ferrari's done a good job to get a comeback here. Obviously fell down multiple positions from both drivers' perspectives, but Chesney currently in P3, or Chesney Riz, and Gabby in P5, so it may not be the glorious 1-2 that Ferrari are looking for, but it is a glorious 3-5, and it is great constructors points for the Ferrari drivers at this current point. Chesney separates them from getting a 3-4, potentially even higher. Either way, the AlphaTauri is doing a good job and doing everything he needs to do to stay ahead and to be ahead. The Red Bull of ART Lux losing the rear a little bit, but not too bad from ERS being used just momentarily. Kookaburra picks up a 3-second time penalty, and OXL4 still needs to come into the pit lane. Right now, that 3-second time penalty would still see Kookaburra up in front, because Chesney has a 3.3 second gap, or now 3.2, but it's definitely just above 3 seconds, and that's all that matters, because right now a single thousandth to 5 tenths, either way the gap does not mean that you can have position. Trying to find a fight with all the drivers trying to separate from each other on this second stint on all these new compounds of tires. For Nano, it's still old 12 lap mediums, but for the most of it, it is just driving and creating bigger gaps. The Ferrari of Gabby getting closer to the AlphaTauri of Chesney. Chesney into that lower elevation dip. They're trying to gain a bit more time. Gabby going more inside there. A bit more of an aggressive line if more you were going for an overtake, but either way, Chesney pulling away there, getting a really decent exit compared to the Ferrari, even though it is down to 1.4 at this current stage. The Ferrari of Chesney Riz gets DRS on the Red Bull of Kookaburra, and maybe these newer tyres, the 2-lap old, so 2-lap younger tyres of Chesney compared to Kookaburra could be beneficial for the Ferrari. And if, to be fair, the Ferrari can get past the Red Bull, he will eventually adopt P1 from OXL4, who is refusing to come into the pit lane on 21 lap old components. I can't say the word because my voice is dead, even though I haven't really been shouting. Either way, currently OXL4 21 lap old compounds was the word I was looking for, but with a 3.3 second gap to the Red Bull just behind, so he needs to keep getting closer there. Eventually OXL4 will come into the pit lane, doesn't speed in the pit lane, so won't pick up a 5-second penalty on the penalties that he already has received. Kookaburra will now take the lead back, with Chesney Riz not that far behind with a 3.9 second gap. McLaren back marker will follow pursuit behind that Ferrari. Chesney and the AlphaTauri will now retake podium position in P3, so not too bad, as OXL4 now finds his feeting, finds his placement, and eventually we are all sorted out. And most strategies work and then some don't. Normally overcutting doesn't work unless your car is very speedy and can actually create a 20-second gap on your own. Either way though, the Red Bull of ART Lux on those 7-lap old hard compounds has 10 laps remaining. Just like every other driver, there are 10 laps remaining in this race. Red flashing from the back of that car, but there would also be red flashing on the back of the Red Bull too. And it seems both drivers fighting very harsh, both using up all the ERS that they have, trying to get closer or further from each other. Chesney Riz currently in P2 with a 4.3 second gap. I know I keep repeating myself, but I mean it's pretty evident. Look at the gaps, how close they are. The closest fight at the moment is the Red Bull and Ferrari of ART Lux and Gabby. ART Lux is going to get a really good exit though, and maybe the boring gaps is going to come to an end. Wheel to wheel on the main straight onto the pit straight. Gabby's going to back out of it, and Gabby's potentially going a bit more strategic here, even though it probably hasn't worked out, and Gabby will now lose position to the Red Bull of ART Lux, who now takes P4 from the Ferrari DRS active. For Gabby, will it be close enough? Probably not. Into the 100 braking board, and yeah, that's pretty much it for the Ferrari. The Red Bull just seems to have way more pace compared to him. Chesney and the AlphaTauri, 9.5 off Chesney and the Ferrari, with Kookaburra currently in P1. Once again, gaps are really big, and it makes this very hard to find some battling without just saying that there is a gap between another driver. Either way, yellow flag, and that seems to be the Mercedes of Banana. What has happened there? Some type of spin and potential loss in rear between the first and second corners there. Unfortunate for the Mercedes. So obviously Kookaburra leads with a 4.3 second gap. Chesney in P2. Doesn't seem that there is much that he can do at this current stage. The Ferrari probably won't be able to pick up the win just with the pure pace that Kookaburra has shown. It seems the only way that really this Ferrari can win is off of a crash or some type of spin or collision with a back marker, but I think back markers are ghosted anyway. OXL4 with a 3-second time penalty for track limits. Unfortunate for him. The Ferrari is trying his best, but now it's become a 5-second gap, so unfortunate for Chesney. Gabby into the exit of the hairpin, trying to gain time on ART Lux. Nothing really happening at this current second for a move to be made. And once again, this is the one issue about Portugal, is that these gaps get so large that it's hard to commentate racing when most racing is between a driver who isn't being blue flagged and a driver who is being blue flagged. so it does make it slightly hard to commentate, but I'm going to try my absolute best with the laps remaining. 11 laps currently left in this race. Gabby comes into the pit lane once again, and the Ferrari is going to fall down multiple positions. And the man who was praising a 1-2 result for Ferrari has to change the front wing and will fall down to P7, P8. Will Slippy be able to do it? Yep, definitely P9. And Marco maybe just out of that reach of an undercut. So P9 for Gabby. Obviously not what he wanted, not what he was anticipating, not what he signed up for. Obviously looking to be competitive, to stay competitive, to get a 1-2 with Ferrari, but there's only one Ferrari in that 1-2, and it is only in 2, while the Red Bull of Kookaburra, just like real life with Red Bull, seems to be dominant over the field at this current stage. Either way, out of pit lane exit, Marco has caught a decent little slipstream on the Ferrari of Gabby. DRS active, inside line, tries to maybe make the Ferrari fault. Does make the Ferrari go wide, but no move was able to be made for the Haas, and stays in P10, and Gabby in P9. The Haas closest we've had for a while, the most entertaining fight we've had in a while. Logan picks up another 3-second time penalty, and it seems Logan just stacking up and up and up like Thanos with the stones, except with time penalties and a McLaren car. So right now, once again, looking for some type of action to occur here in Portugal. 6/10 at the moment is the Haas driver. DRS now active on the Ferrari. Doesn't seem close enough to make any move possible into the braking zone. Right over the curb, not too over. Just need to make sure you can get a good balance between it. Marco into the third corner, bit of a lag spike there, but keeps it clean for the most part, and good recovery with the ABS. Nearly lost the rear, but using ABS able to keep it in a straight line. Locks up quite badly going into the hairpin, and that will give an advantage to the Ferrari of Gabby, who is now in P9 on soft compounds. Chesney with a 5.2 second gap, and it definitely seems out of reach for the Ferrari driver. Just not close enough, and Kookaburra is doing everything he needs to do to win this at the moment. Lap 28 of 33, he started on pole. He's still in P1 even after a couple of overtakes at the start. Remember Alpine of Sam Ross? Well, he's now retired and out of the entire race. Either way, Kookaburra doing everything he needs to do. It's actually an Australian bird, so Chesney into the higher elevation corner, to the point where it is almost a blind side going downwards, but keeps it clean for the most part. 5.2 second gap, and I'm sure that gap will only increase then decrease. The Aston Martin of OXL4 seems to have been overtaken by ART Lux into P4, and it seems that gap is starting to be extended now. A bit of fighting happening later on. It seems to be mainly for blue flags, or just because Sponge Star is ghosted. Scotty Boy with a 119.6 takes fastest lap purple. Overall, the Mercedes of Banana getting closer to the Alfa Romeo of Scotty Boy. Scotty Boy now picks up a 3-second time penalty along to go with the fastest lap, so not great for the Alfa Romeo. Once again, looking for a decent fight, and it seems we found one. The Aston Martin around the outside. Room was left for the Red Bull, but maybe not enough traction for the Aston Martin. He loses his rear down to P4, and Chesney in the AlphaTauri will be able to keep the position. Actually, different driver. It was ART Lux. It must have been taken out with the Aston Martin, and unfortunately that's both drivers unfortunately having some type of raise in tyre temps, and probably a couple of flat spots on the tyres as well, so unfortunate for ART Lux and OXL4. being fully honest, this is a very hard race to commentate when everyone is 12 seconds behind each other. But once again, I'm trying my best to commentate what I can commentate off of what I have. Gabby, currently P9, 4.3 off Slippy. It was 11.3 off Ozaswaza. Trying to catch the Haas of Ida. Just doesn't seem to be happening though. Seems everyone's in their own rhythm, in their own flow, and it seems to all start to be slowing down. I have said the wrong things, probably. I'm tired. I think I'm having a lack of English. But we're gonna keep going anyway, because I'm at least here. So, yeah. Lack of English is a lack of English. Ik ben gek, je bent lotzat. Let's keep moving. The Ferrari of Gabby currently in P9. I feel like I'm going over the same people with the same gaps, with the same direction. Some guy in stream, keep an eye out for spins and crashes. Prioritize them over the rest of actions. I mean, that's helpful, but there's not any spins and crashes. I know when there's a spin and crash because it's very easy to tell, but like there is no spins and crashes, just big 3-second or more gaps between each driver. Marco currently in P10. P11. Yeah, let's just go through the grid. We're gonna go through the grid, boys, because what else is better than a nice little gritty grid? Let's go through the grid stuff. 31 out of the 33 laps. As you can tell, Portugal has become a bit of a boring race. Not much is happening. Yellow flag. I think that's the Haas of Marco. Struggling, some type of issues there, but got it under control. Probably using ABS to straighten out the car there. 31 of 33 laps. A bit of battling between Gabby, the Ferrari, and Alfa Romeo. Oh my god, we actually have battling. Gabby maybe trying to overtake. Indeed, it seems some actual battling around Portugal for the first time in 15 years. DRS active for the Alfa Romeo, but it doesn't seem close enough for the Ferrari. And the Ferrari will just pull away from the Alfa Romeo like it's nothing, and it is an overtake stuck well for the driver. Penultimate lap now. And I think let's just give a description of this race, ladies and gentlemen, while we spectate over Kookaburra, because he's done everything he's needed to do, and all the other gaps are 20 years between each other. So equal cars are on, yes. Let's discuss it like this, ladies and gentlemen. Kookaburra, he stuck it on pole. He did everything he needed to do. 32 out of the 33 laps. It is the penultimate lap. It was entertaining in the beginning. Lots of overtakes, lots of people coming into the pits, lots of random tyre changes. It was exciting, it was exhilarating to watch. But as the laps went by, the gaps continued to grow, and my commentary became more dull because the race was more dull. And when something becomes dull, everything becomes dull. But either way, for one man, it won't be so dull. Because around the second last corner and then around the final corner, he'll have one lap. And if he can keep that lap clean, he's done well and truly everything he needs to do to make sure that penalty won't affect him. It is lap 33 of 33. It is the last lap, ladies and gentlemen. Not much action happening out on track, except one man who will get to celebrate with everything he's got. Let's go through a lap. So obviously around the first couple of corners, keeping it pretty clean. 2/10 up in the first sector. I'd love to see the grid after penalties are applied. Oh, that's gonna be a very interesting little cinematic there, just all the arrows going up and down. Banana picking up another 3-second time penalty, but won't be affected because last currently there seems to be a yellow flag out, but it seems it was for Sponge Star, who made some type of mistake. So let's go to the Red Bull. Obviously, as we have said, through the penultimate lap, he did everything he needed to do. He started on pole, he lost a couple of positions in the beginning. You're saying Chesney will be in P1. Let's go to the gap. Penalties. 3-second time penalty. Around the final corner, Kookaburra will see the checkered flag and he will win the Portuguese Grand Prix. Chesney will come across the checkered flag. He will come in P2. Ferrari couldn't get the 1-2 that they so hopefully wanted. An 11-second gap. Chesney will not have to worry. The AlphaTauri, the reserve driver who takes the AlphaTauri, finishes off the podium. And my entire speech for my podium was completely ruined by some guy in stream and Twitch chat. The one thing I have full control over because nothing else is entertaining, and I got distracted by telemetry. Either way, it's okay. It's okay. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Kookaburra in P1. It's another win for the Red Bull driver who won in Imola and now he wins in Portugal. Honestly, maybe that is the speech that it deserves, but not 100% sure. Not everyone's crossed the line though. Nano's gonna come very slowly across the line. In P10, well, Sponge Star's gonna take it over. Nano in P11, now P12, Scotty Boy in P13. The last man to do so. No fuel left in that car. You can tell he is limping badly. I think maybe he'll finish in the pit lane, but weaving left and right, checkered flag waving for him. That is race over. A boring one, sure. A dull one, definitely. My commentary potentially losing all of its English sentences at one point and just me becoming slightly psychotic, potentially. But either way, that was the Portuguese Grand Prix. That has to be the worst commentary I have ever done. So don't say POG commentary, because that was so bad. But it's fine, because I'm sure it's not my last time doing F2. I'm sure I will be back again. Maybe next week, maybe in 2 weeks, maybe in 3 weeks, maybe never again. We don't know how it will go. We don't know how it shapes. The Red Bull driver points towards the fans with the trophy, the crowd clapping, the team clapping away. Champagne, bubbly, spraying. Here on the podium, there's Adrian Newey, the Red Bull chief director, just currently taking it for the constructors. Orange Pool says hi. Hello, Orange Pool. Here is your standings, Jenga boy. There you are, Joshua. There is your standings. There is your race director. We'll go through all of them. If you need to pause, just pause. I'll just go up and down, and then you can pause if you need to. Right, pit stops. There you go. Alrighty. That's everything that you will need, Joshua. Yep, so many jump starts. Okay. Well, this is where I say goodbye. I may potentially see you next week, like I said, or maybe I'll see you in 2 weeks. It really depends on how busy I am. Busy times. Like I said, it was good racing in the beginning, but it did become quite dull with like 15-second gaps between everyone, which didn't really make it that fun, but we move. It is what it is. Next, what's the next Grand Prix? What is the next Grand Prix on the calendar, ladies and gentlemen? we head to Austria, to the Red Bull Ring for round 7. Like I said, maybe I'll be commentating, maybe it will be Ryan, maybe it will be TJ, maybe it will be someone else. Either way, thank you for stopping by. Some guy in stream said Imola, but it was not Imola. Thank you for stopping by. I apologize for this very scuffed stream that is below average by my standards and should have been much better commentary, and it should have been much better racing because it was very dull and it felt way more realistic to normal F1, which sometimes we just don't want. It is currently 3:48 in the morning here in Western Australia, so I'm gonna go get some sleep before chatting to people on Discord. Good night. Love you all. I will see you maybe in Austria, maybe later on. Adios.